All right. Thank you so much for attending session 6A, Training and Mentorship in RDM at the 2025 RDAP Summit. This is a Zoom webinar. Attendees are muted and cameras are turned off. To ask a question, please use the Q&A feature that you see at the bottom of your screen. This session will run from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and include 2 live presentations followed by 2 pre-recorded lightning talks, with the last 15 minutes open for Q&A. We will save all questions until the end of the session, but please feel free to submit your questions throughout the presentation. When asking a question, please indicate the presenter or presenters that you would like to direct your question to. And then after the session, please feel free to drop any questions and continue the conversation in the session chat on FeedLoop. So we have a code of conduct in effect during the duration of the summit. The Research Data Access and Preservation Summit organizers are committed to providing an environment where all attendees can participate fully in the program and activities without fear of harassment or discriminatory behavior of any kind. There's a code of conduct helper available during this session. Jennifer Chaput is identified as the COC helper both in FeedLoop and here in Zoom. And it looks like she has the message here in the chat function as well. Thank you, Jennifer. And you can direct any messages to them if you need any assistance. They can provide you with the code of conduct email address or the link to the incident report form if needed. All right, so with that, let's move on to the presentations. First, we will hear from Kevin Reed on using a faculty recruitment strategy to train research staff and students to develop data management plans. Kevin, take it away.
Thank you. I'll just make sure my screen is shared here. Everybody can see that okay?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thanks for having me this morning. I'm Kevin Reed, and I'm currently located at the University of Saskatchewan in Saskatoon, Canada, which is Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis. Just for a bit of context, we're one of the U15 research institutions in Canada, meaning one of the top research institutions. We have about 24,000 students and close to 2,000 faculty and research staff on campus. For context, from a service support perspective, I am the only data management support person on campus currently, and we also have a research data management coordinator named Colleen Cochran, who serves as a connector between the library, our IT department, and our research office. And she had a role to play in developing this program around faculty recruitment training. The goal for today is really to identify a gap I found in providing data management training, describe how I developed and implemented an approach, and then review the outcomes of what this training looked like. So to start off with the gap, maybe some of you feel this way when you provide RDM training, but I found myself increasingly frustrated with one-shot data management instruction. You know, you're invited to come in where you're not really meeting students at the right time. They're not prepared to learn about data management. Maybe you're pulling into a class a group from the humanities and the social sciences and the sciences, and it's really hard to connect with them all at the same time. And in a lot of our assessment, we were receiving feedback from attendees, whether they were students, faculty, or staff, saying, oh, I really wish my faculty member was here. Or the faculty would say, oh, I really wish my graduate student was here to say that, or to hear this as well. And then generally poor attendance when you hold one-off workshops within the library. I just found it wasn't necessarily showing me that I was making a meaningful impact in providing training to our research community in the right way. I have had success meeting students at the right time in a more targeted venue. So a few years ago, I integrated open science training into an undergraduate curriculum where students were learning about research and just developing and designing a research project for the first time. And this was worth 10% of their final grade. And it really made an impact because it was connected directly to their research efforts and their research output. And in the past 2 years, in 2023 and 24, we revamped it to focus specifically on data management and DMPs rather than on open science directly. And what this led to is that when students finished their project, which was a poster they presented and published in our institutional repository, alongside that work was a data management plan and data documentation that was attached directly to that research output. And from these experiences, I saw the real value of providing training in this way, where you were directly connecting data management planning, specifically to research projects. And so this led me to ask a couple of questions from a service and training perspective around, can we develop a training program that engages students, staff, and faculty supervisors in data management simultaneously? Can we design it to accommodate ongoing research projects? So I wasn't just coming in cold, it was people taking a training program because they wanted to do this for their own research that would actually help their own research. Can we add incentive to participate? And what would happen if we made it campus-wide? So these were the questions I asked myself when I started to think about this recruitment strategy as a training program. And I'm going to talk about the approach for doing that right now. So the start of this was really to set a number of library goals for developing a data management program that focused on faculty recruitment. And that was, first, we wanted to collaborate with campus partners, mainly our research office, to get the word out and to connect with researchers at that level. We wanted to make a program that was practical and directly applicable to existing research projects. We wanted to reach as many people as possible. And most importantly, is we wanted to require faculty to register their students and staff to participate. So I want to be clear here that if a student saw the program in marketing and came to us wanting to take it, we would say, you can't take it on your own, talk to your supervisor, and then take it afterwards. So we really wanted to focus on the idea of faculty, students, and staff working together to do this, and having faculty incentive push them to do this. On the attendee side, we wanted them to learn to comply with Canadian federal data management requirements. We're a few years behind the States in terms of requirements for data management, but it is coming. So this was a perfect time to do this kind of training. We obviously want them to adopt data management best practices into existing research. We wanted to develop a data management plan specific to a research project they were working on. And then one of the incentives was that we would give them feedback, or I specifically would give feedback on any data management plan that was provided. The program itself was pretty simple. We held an introductory RDM training session for an hour and a half that had various activities. A week later, we held a data management plan building workshop where the teams could come together in person and work on data management plans through the various steps of what a plan looks like. A week after that, they submitted a final version of that plan. And then 2 weeks later, I gave them feedback on that plan. So that was the focus of what the format and the program would look like. From a logistics perspective, faculty members had to register their students and staff in order to be eligible to participate. I'm going to call them HQP, or highly qualified personnel, from here on out, because that's how it's referred to at our institution. We strategically conducted this from mid-May to the first week of June because we knew it was kind of that sweet spot between when exams had ended and when faculty were starting to hire students and coordinate research staff to invest time in research over the summer. And we held an information session for faculty ahead of the program. So here you can see a breakdown of what we sent to people when we were doing the marketing around the expectations of what an HQP student or staff would have to participate in, and the commitment from the faculty supervisor. You can note here that most of the things for faculty we said were optional, except for the 2 hours they had to commit to helping their staff or students build the plan itself. We kept it optional because we felt like if we made it required, we probably would have got far less interest in the program. And we kind of wanted to do a sneak attack to see, well, maybe faculty will learn by proxy and show interest anyways in doing it this way. So trying to remove as many barriers as possible. From a marketing perspective, I really felt like we didn't leave a single stone unturned in terms of how we got the message out. Our RDM coordinator, Colleen, did an amazing job of connecting us to our research office, and we truly used every single research communication channel possible. And so I feel pretty confident to say there's no way a faculty member on campus didn't see this message in one way or another. Once the messaging went out, we used a recruitment form to have faculty sign up. And the form was pretty basic. It's just, who are you? What's your email? What college are you coming from? And what department? And how many students and staff are you signing up? And how would you like to learn? So this was a relatively easy way to do this. One issue we had was that students were filling this out themselves. So we had to go back to them and say, no, you can't do that. Talk to your faculty first. We also provided incentives to people who participated. One was undergrads who took this program. We have a summer undergraduate research experience program here at USask. And what it does is it allows undergrads to take a series of training, and they have to reach a certain number of credit hours over the summer to fill that program. We offered 5 credit hours to students to do this when normal classes would only receive 1 credit hour. For other HQP, we also created a completion certificate of no real bearing or significance at all. However, I have to say that staff were incredibly excited about receiving a certificate, so just something to think about if you're thinking about training in the future. And then we also focused on professional incentives. So this will help you comply with the policy. As a faculty member, if all of your students and staff build a data management plan, you're going to have a better idea of what they're doing. It's going to improve team communication. So we try to lean on that as well, just to show people why this is of value and beneficial. We then coordinated the entire program in Canvas, which is our learning management system. So all training materials, the data management plan submission system, Q&A discussions were all held within this particular program. So it was easier for me to communicate and to answer questions and for everyone to see all of that material. So let's talk a little bit about the outcomes. I'll talk first about registration, and then I'll talk about completion and some of what we found from there. And I would say it's an understatement to say that the number of registrations we received far exceeded what I expected. We had 67 faculty members register 132 of their HQP to participate in the program. And faculty members registered on average 2 HQP, with some doing as low as 1 and as many having 9 people register. You can see here in the table on this slide, it's just a snippet or a subset of an example of the different departments and colleges who participated and the number of faculty from each college. So also a really nice distribution of people from a lot of different disciplines. So when it came to the number of people who registered to the number of people who completed, we did run into a bit of an issue. And that was a week before the program, I caught COVID. And I couldn't speak anymore, and I could barely move. And so what we had to do was push the program back 2 weeks and transfer everything to be online. So originally it was going to be in person and highly collaborative that way, but I did have to transfer everything to be online because of illness, which is unfortunate. However, the completion data that we found, I still feel like we made a meaningful impact, and that's what I'm going to talk about for the rest of the presentation. So in the end, we had 54 HQP from 17 different faculty who completed the program. 37 data management plans were submitted overall, and faculty were actually listed as contributors on almost 57% of those data management plans. And again, the submissions range from only having 1 contributor to as many as 9. And again, here on the side, you can see the table of the colleges and departments who submitted data management plans in total. So we still had a pretty good distribution and interest across these different groups. In terms of the use of material, in terms of the Canvas course, 159 different people, so students, engaged with the online course. We had over 7,400 page views, and that omits anything that from myself or the research coordinator that I talked about previously. In terms of the online training modules, 68 unique HQP participated in the training. It was downloaded over 350 times and almost 3,000 minutes delivered in total. In terms of the feedback, we had 26 people complete the program evaluation afterwards, and you can see the distribution there. And to me, probably the most meaningful finding is that all of them said they would build a data management plan again in the future. And the recommendation or highly recommended of this program to others was pretty positive. We also learned why they signed up for the program in the first place. So everything from completing a project to having to comply with a grant policy. And we learned about how they're going to use what they learned for the program. So everything from project planning to data security to better file naming conventions, showing that the material we presented had an impact on them. And then in terms of the program evaluation, they described how they'll use what they learned. They said they definitely would or probably would. And it seems like we hit a relatively decent sweet spot in terms of the level of presented material being appropriate, with only a few saying it was too low. So just to wrap up, in terms of the challenges, one is the absolutely astronomical registration numbers that we received. I truly thought we would get 10 faculty members who signed up for this. So to have over 200 people total show interest in this program, to me, is a bonus. Obviously, transitioning from online based on in-person was a challenge because of illness. I do wonder if we would have had better completion rates because of that. And the time and effort was incredible. It took an incredible amount of time to do this, but at the same time, I'm now set up for future years where the infrastructure, the marketing material is all in place and ready to go. And then finally, the benefits of this were, again, the number of people who were willing to register. We had high engagement with the training modules, strong collaboration with the library and the research office. And I think for me, most importantly, when we think back to that online one-shot training instruction, 17 faculty members worked with over 50 HQP to develop data management plans. And that's tangible real-world work that helps them improve their research. And for me, that's a boon there. So I'll leave it at that because I see the camera has come on. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more about this, we ran a pilot a few years ago, which is a bullet, the first bullet, and then the open science one is after. And if any of you are interested in trying this at your own institutions, I am happy to share anything and everything from marketing material to slides to the course structure. So thanks for your time today and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I will be reaching out to you to see how I can incorporate this into some of my own training program plans. Okay, so next we will hear from Emily Kilser and Kathleen Flynn on building resilient research practices, integrating RDM into graduate education.
Thank you, Lisa. Can everybody see the screen? Okay. Yeah, awesome. Okay. Yeah, so thank you. Thanks for having us today. My name is Emily Kilser, and I'm here with Kathleen Flynn, and we are here to talk to you about building resilient research practices, which is the story of our attempt at integrating research data management into graduate education. And I was chatting with Kathleen before we started, and I was like, I'm so glad we're going second. And then after hearing Kevin, I kind of feel like we should have gone the other way because we're like the baby version of what he's done. So keep that in mind. And I hope you can extend his grace as we tell our story. Okay, so before we begin, we have to do the obligatory snapshot of the university at Albany. It's a diverse R1. We have lots of transfer students, lots of first-generation students, a diverse student body. The university administration is deeply invested in our signature strengths, which have been identified as climate science, cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, health science, and emergency preparedness. So disciplines that are very data intensive, right? You can see our undergraduate and graduate population numbers here, as well as faculty. We have our sponsored award funding that you can see as well, which really jumped up when we reabsorbed the College of Nanoscience a year or two ago. That really changed the funding landscape at Albany. Our institutional priorities are included here as well. And really the leading factor in every initiative that we do is student success. Recruitment and retention is sort of the constant drumbeat. And, understandably, we want our students to succeed. That's why we're here as higher education institutions. But that really is sort of a guiding principle for all of the work that we do. So within that context, I want to introduce the data services team. This is really an organic cross-organizational team that includes members from the Data Management and Analytics Center, Information Technology Services, in particular, the Research Technology Manager, the Office of Research and Regulatory Compliance, and then library representation. Libraries have sort of pulled the group together and lead the group, but this really is a very collaborative, reciprocal team of folks that trust one another and help one another, answer questions. We connect people to resources that they need. If we don't have the answers, that kind of thing. We develop workshops together. We, offer a monthly newsletter that everybody sort of pitches in on at different times. So what do? We consult on everything from data management plans to data sharing. We have tools and services that will sound familiar to a lot of folks. We have a UAlbany customized instance of DMP tool. We have an open access repository, a sort of a repository of last resort called Scholars Archive, where ICPSR members. And then we really do rely heavily on training. And you can see a list here of training that we've done in the past, everything from data management 101 to data visualization. Our data services colleagues have started to develop workshops that are related to compliance and security. And so this is a continually sort of evolving, expanding suite of offerings. We have worked really diligently through the years that we've been working together to make sure that not only are we marketing, and this sort of reflects what Kevin was talking about, not only are we marketing within our library colleagues, but we're connecting with the Division of Research, with the graduate school. We're really trying to make sure we're plugging our offerings where people will find them. And that's been beneficial. We've been pulled into the Division of Research's efforts. They have something called the Research Coffee Hour. So we've presented there. The new faculty orientation that the Division of Research Office offers, we've presented there as well. So we're trying to make sure that we make those connections and expand who it is we're able to reach. So much like Kevin, there's only so much you can do with a one-shot instruction, right? Offering workshops is sort of an opt-in, it's an opt-in offering, right? People have to be interested, they have to come. And so, for example, our Research Data Management 101 workshop, which we offer consistently twice a year in the fall and in the spring. It's about an hour. We collaborate. Kathleen, our colleague Sandra McGinnis from the Data Management and Analytics Center, and I used to offer those together. And we were able to reach about 100 attendees over the course of when we first started that in 2021 to the present day. And it's been successful, right? We reached 100 people. That's good. And I think as a result of Kathleen really being the face of the training, the research data services training that we're offering from within the libraries, she's been invited to guest lecture. And so that's sort of extended what it is we've been able to do, right? And so she was invited to guest lecture twice. Okay. 3 times, sorry, in the information environment class. So Albany has a library science program. One of our colleagues in the library invited Kathleen to present. And so this was an opportunity for 3 hours to talk about scholarly communication, open science, and data management topics. But that's a lot to cram into 3 hours, right? Everything from copyright and impact metrics to, file naming and author rights. Like, it's a lot. It's a lot. So it was a sprint and a marathon at the same time. Kathleen developed a really robust offering. It really was lecture-based, and so initial feedback that she got was, more hands-on activities would be helpful. So she updated the course and has since offered it again, and that continues to be successful. But again, this is both of those are sort of by invitation, and we wanted to make sure that we were extending and growing what it is the data services team was doing. And so we were talking about this within the team, and one of our colleagues, the research technology manager at the time, had gone through UAlbany as a graduate student, and he was like, you know what, you should do a session in research methods. a class that every graduate student has to take. And so you can see here sort of the description of what research methods covers. It's a natural fit to have data management be part of that class. So then the challenge became, okay, well, how do we get in that class? How do we get our foot in the door? And that was just dumb luck, or, you know, the stars or the fates smiling on us. I was talking with a faculty member from the library science department. She is a researcher that works in Tanzania. She goes there frequently. She's really committed to open science because of her lived experience. And we were chatting and talking about this and that. And I was like, oh, data services. She didn't know we had a data services department. So I sent her a bunch of information. And she watched one of our data management workshops. And she was like, oh, this is great. I never knew this. And so we, you know, had other conversation. And I said during another conversation, well, we've always wanted to, not always, but I was being dramatic. We wanted to do data management within the research methods class. It seems like it's a good fit. And she said, oh, I'm teaching research methods this fall. Do you want to come? I'm going to Tanzania, you know, in October. Can you come do a class? And so we did. And I'll stop talking here and hand the mic over to Kathleen, and she can continue the story from here.
Thanks, Emily. So next slide. So the faculty member who graciously invited us to give a lecture in her graduate research methods class had a week where she was, as Emily said, going to be away. So she asked if we could do our lecture via Zoom. So it was an evening class and it lasted 3 hours and it had around 25 students. And this past Tuesday, I repeated this same lecture for the same professor for her in-person research methods class as well. So we built on our previous 1 hour research data management lecture that had a couple of exercises. Expanding it helped us go into more details about each topic, feature more hands-on exercises for the students, and show practical examples of things such as a data management plan. And students were creating a grant proposal for their final project, and they were offered extra credit if they completed a DMP. So for exercises, we feature topics that you see here, so such as file naming, file organization, spreadsheet best practices, de-identification, data security, READMEs, data citations, and reviewing a data management plan that needed some improvements. Next slide. So here's an example of one of our file naming exercises. So we have some examples here that have spaces in the file name or really long file names that could be more concise, some that are a little vague, some that could use a better system of tracking versions, etc. And since we were in Zoom for the first session, we used the poll feature to ask students if they thought each file name was good or not. And we were happy to see that the students then also shared comments in the chat when we nudged them to elaborate on their choices. And in the in-person class this past Tuesday, the students, I remember they noticed the lack of standardized date formats, the spaces in the file name, the vagueness of some of the names, the versioning issues, how long number 3 is. And they even noted that the final example might make sense to someone in the discipline, but not to everyone. So some documentation could still be helpful. And we also found that having the 3 of us teaching was valuable because not only could we divide up the slides, but we noticed that we each had different opinions and perspectives on these examples and on our other exercise examples. So between the 3 of us, we were really able to give students a lot of things to consider. Next slide. We also had an example of a messy project folder, and we asked students what they thought about it and how it could be improved. So some issues with this folder that we were highlighting include bad file naming again, but opportunities for a folder structure to organize this better. We also had a second example of a messy project folder that was a bit more complicated as well. Next slide. We also had a couple of de-identification exercises, and we shared some helpful resources from Dryad about identifiers to help students with these. So in this example, we kept it simple and asked students how they could de-identify this data. We also had another example that demonstrated how with enough indirect identifiers, it could still be possible to identify someone. Next slide. And then we were excited to have students critique a fictional data management plan that needed some work. So in our 1 hour RDM lecture that we regularly give, we don't have enough time to really go over an actual plan in detail. So this example here that we shared with students is deliberately sparse, but not too complicated. And we were hoping for students to point out certain info that could be included in the plan, such as really more details in general, but more details on file types that will be generated, where the data will be shared and when, specifics about how the data will be stored and backed up, if there are any legal or confidentiality issues, etc. And I might want to tweak this exercise a bit more for the future, but students were able to point out things that were lacking. And we then showed the students an example of a good plan and also showed them where they could browse other examples, including from multiple funders. And they really liked to see examples of an actual plan in full, including plans with qualitative data. And on Tuesday, the students wanted to also see qualitative data plans. And the class from Tuesday, instead of it being optional, extra credit to write a data management plan for their assignment, it's required now for their assignment. So they really appreciated the example of a completed plan. Next slide. So overall, we were really pleased with the lectures. The students were more engaged than we expected since it was an online evening class where the professor wasn't even present. And the professor shared some student feedback with us after the session. Overall, students appreciated the practical and interactive examples from the class. Some topics that stood out to them were file naming and versioning, storage ethics, the importance of metadata and data preservation, and the need to proactively plan to manage data. They also expressed an interest in other workshops for things like Tableau or Power BI. And the professor watched our recording and was thankfully happy with it. She even said that she learned some things as well. And she's been super helpful with advocating within her department to expand our reach. She also suggested that it might be good to include the lecture at the undergraduate level as well. So we'll see if we could pilot that. And the in-person lecture for the same class that I gave this Tuesday was also for an evening class. And that was really the biggest issue that I found. The students are tired. The next slide.
You're at one.
So thank you. So after a successful first and second lecture within that research methods course, our next steps are to continue to build adoption within that college at the graduate and possibly undergraduate level. So some students last semester liked that the lesson was in Zoom. Some said it wasn't ideal. I'll be curious to see what the class from this Tuesday thought, if they had any feedback since they were in person. And we were also happy that a different CEHC professor used a recording of our RDM lecture in their online asynchronous research methods class. So that's 2 professors that have an interest at the moment. And we're hoping that word of mouth and outreach from us and our CEHC project partner will help us expand into research methods courses in other departments, schools, and colleges as well. And then longer term, we're hoping to get IRB approval and partner with the Data Management and Analytics Center to administer some kind of assessment to students, such as a pre and post test or a short 10-question quiz. So we hope those results can help us improve our lecture. Next slide. And we just wanted to share the openly licensed resources that we were inspired by for our exercises. We found resources from the following sources, and I also have to admit, I used ChatGPT to create some first drafts for the de-identification and the bad DMP exercises, and they weren't too bad. So next slide. So that's everything from us. Thank you for listening, and we're happy to take questions or comments later.
Great, thank you very much. We will move on to our 2 lightning talks. The first one is supporting our future colleagues remote student-led data internship by Daria Orlowska. And the second one is training a student to train the trainer, an LIS master's student internship project on developing an RDM toolkit for liaison librarians by Alyssa Rod and Emma Garlock.
Hello, my name is Daria Orlowska. I'm the data librarian at Western Michigan University, and today I will be talking about supporting our future colleagues, remote student-led data internship. It is my hope that this talk will inspire you to consider how we as a field are currently preparing students for future data librarianship careers, how we can embrace student-led experiences, and how we can transition to a focus on skill building instead of minimum skill requirements. Over the next 5 minutes, I will touch on the initiative background, how I decided to set up a paid internship, how it went, experience standouts from the intern's perspective, and my thoughts on offering an internship in this manner. Very generally, the initiative was started in 2020 when the archive staff and I identified some collection candidates to turn into data sets. I set up the preliminary structures as a proof of concept, and this enabled us to provide a project to student interns whose in-person experiences at the archives were interrupted by the pandemic. Between 2020 and 2021, I co-supervised 2 graduate students and 1 undergraduate student in their work with 2 different collections. I also worked to transform their efforts into data sets and data literacy resources, which you can learn more about in the book chapter and podcast episode linked on this slide. In 2022, my library created a paid MLIS graduate internship program, and I was encouraged to submit a proposal. However, I knew I wanted to make some changes to the unpaid initial structure. For one, interns were using spreadsheet structures created by me for a pre-selected collection, which meant they weren't receiving the experience of building out a project, and therefore had a lack of autonomy and ownership over it. To them, the work consisted only of transforming the collection into a data set, without having to understand the collection needs, which meant they had a lack of opportunity to articulate interest and set skill-based goals. Since I was a co-supervisor, I only met with interns a handful of times and did not have the time to develop a relationship with them or offer them mentorship, not only around the skills they wanted to cultivate, but also around the profession. So for the paid internship, I really wanted to propose a shift in direction, with the purpose not being an output, such as turning a collection into a data set, but rather focused on the experience of skill building and professional development and preparation for a career in librarianship. The first step was building out autonomy and ownership through creating a document for interns with information about each collection to make project selection easier and more in tune with their interests. We created 4 additional collections that we wanted to make more widely available, and I worked on creating a menu of offerings for each collection. I also used this as an opportunity to generate a list of skills that future interns could refer to when setting goals and assessing progress. Next, I created entrance and exit interviews for the internship. These not only established student need and evaluated internship success, but also provided a baseline that students could refer to refine goals and translate their experience into skills on a resume. With those tools in place, I launched a search for a flexible modality spring internship. Setting up a remote hire for the first time was a bit challenging and time-consuming, since it required creating a number of documents and figuring out the hiring workflow within the department. Because of this, we ended up extending the internship through the end of the summer. The intern chose to focus on the first year of The Western Activist, a counterculture student-run newspaper from the 1960s. Through mutual decision-making, we decided to also explore text analysis in Tagat and create a landing page in Scalar, in addition to generating research-ready plain text files of the issues. Supplemental activities also included discussions around the readings and data topics, interviews with colleagues, working on presentation skills, and translating the experience into a job search talking point. I also wanted to share a few things that my intern found the most useful about the experience. While I expected to see professional development items listed, I was pleasantly surprised to hear that communication and organization were standout items. My intern had listed both of these as things they were good at during the entrance interview, but they really appreciated seeing how it was modeled by me and were eager to share how they implemented these skills in other parts of their life. Overall, I think the position was very successful, despite some time zone challenges. Although this way of customizing experience to individual needs is very rewarding to the student, it does come with a lot of work for the supervisor, so plan for extra time. Some thoughts that I have continued to mull over since this remote internship concluded is how to translate this experience into something shorter or into a different modality, or how to provide future interns who might choose to continue working on a previously selected project the same project setup experience. Thank you so much for your time. I look forward to hearing if you would consider a similar internship approach and answering any of your questions.
Hi, I'm Elisa. I'm the Research Data Management Specialist at McGill University, and I'm going to talk along with Emma Garlick about a LIS Master's Students internship project on developing an RDM toolkit for liaison librarians. The project evolved because we have at McGill a scholarly communications toolkit that's used internally on our intranet. So it was put together by our scholarly communications librarian a few years ago. It includes things like handouts, one-pagers, common reference questions, all linked to internal and external resources. It includes training materials. And it's the audience is liaison librarians. And I hear about this all the time. So basically I had toolkit envy because I would hear, oh, well, we can do more RDM reference or we can do more RDM support if only we had an RDM toolkit like the Scholarly Communications Toolkit. So that was my idea for this project for a practicum student or an intern student. So at McGill, we have an information studies master's program where they have practicums for second year, that's the final year of the program. For students in their second year. So basically they can apply and interview in the fall semester, and then they start the practicum in January for their last semester, and it's about 10 hours a week of work. So it goes through the end of April, and Emma ended up being my student, and now she will take it over.
Hi, everyone. So as was mentioned, my name's Emma. I was the student, but now I'm a research librarian at the University of Ottawa. So for this toolkit, the first kind of challenge was just figuring out what is a toolkit? What's the definition of a toolkit? I decided to approach it as more of an annotated FAQ system. So I had brainstormed a bunch of common RDM related questions that had come up a lot, or I was inspired by kind of overview of Canadian Association of Research Library websites. And then after I'd collected a lot of those resources, each question that I'd identified would have a summary and additional context for the question, hyperlinked resources, whether they were external or resources I made myself, the date the resource was last updated, and then the institutional contact at McGill University for further support. And all of that was organized as we are going to see on the next slide. So this would be the landing page for the toolkit, and up in the corner of the slide, there is a link to kind of a static image of the toolkit if you want to kind of browse through the whole thing yourself. But because there were so many questions and so many resources, we created this landing page to kind of help organize people based on kind of broad topics of support. So all of those blue lines are hyperlinks. So if you would click on them, they would bring you to a more detailed section, like what we see on the next slide. So this is an example of the structure I mentioned before. So with the column on the left, we see the broad question, how do I make a DMP? And then next to it, there is a summary of what the liaison librarian should know if they're dealing with this as a reference question, different links to resources that may be helpful, the most recent update date, and then the contact for the institutional professional responsible for that kind of specific task. And so with that, I will hand it back over to Lisa.
So there are a few takeaways. There's takeaways that are for training liaisons, training other librarians to be familiar with RDM. And what was nice about this toolkit is that it's on our private site. It's on an intranet site that's only available internally. So folks can use it as a reference point to gain access to a bunch of different resources that are developed more with train the trainer in mind. So people who will be doing trainings themselves rather than the general public or the general community of researchers or students. And the nice thing about this toolkit was that it allowed me to then develop a series of in-depth trainings for librarians around the different elements in the toolkit and to have something to point to so that the librarians could take out of that training a handy resource that they could refer to at any moment and not have to look all over the place for different kinds of resources. And Emma will talk about what she got out of it as a student at that time.
Yes, so certainly I think one of the biggest things is that it supplemented the lack of RDM support that existed in kind of my coursework, because we didn't have a specific course for that at McGill at the time. It also really helped to just demystify academic libraries in general and understand a little bit more the relationship between different support divisions. And as somebody who was going through and has now successfully gone through the job market, I did find that it gave me a lot of desirable skills when it came to what people were looking for in a new employee. So that is definitely something that I would consider a plus for any students looking to get involved.
Thank you for your presentations. We have a couple of questions to get started with, and don't forget that you can use the Zoom question and answer function to ask your questions, and we'll be sure to get those taken care of. I don't see any other questions in the chat or in the Q&A. And we are about 4 minutes from our next panel, so I'll go ahead and do a little wrap up here and hope that the rest of the day goes well for you all. But thank you again for our presenters and for the audience in this session. We will see you in the next session, which is poster session number 2, which is followed by a break. Please note that there is a new Zoom link for the poster session, which you can find in the Feed Loop Sessions tab. So thank you again to all of our presenters and all of our attendees for this excellent discussion. Enjoy the rest of your conference. Bye.